Hello and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren, and today I'm going to be reacting to a fat electrician video. This one is called No Tax on Tips. I'm curious to see where this is going. As a bartender myself, and most of my income comes from tips, I'm curious to see, because I feel like it could go one of two ways depending on, like, this video could go one of two ways is where I'm at. I do want to apologize right now if the audio is a little bit wonky. We've been working on it for a while. It is really frustrating. It seems like it is a problem with OBS itself, not like the microphone, not the cables. It's not any of that. It's a problem with the actual software. So we're working on it. But I'm looking forward to this video. And I this is my fat electrician shirt. I've decided to wear it today.
All right, full disclosure, this is just going to turn into unhinged yelling pretty much immediately.
Okay, great. I love unhinged yelling. We'll see. Maybe I'll get unhinged also. We'll find out.
Today we're talking about not taxing tips. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, both presidential candidates have come out and said that they no longer want to tax tips. Now, is this blatantly political pandering to get votes?
Yes.
Because Nevada's a swing state and a ton of them rely on tips for income? Absolutely, okay? But unfortunately, pretty much every tax cut on the books is either pandering directly for votes or pandering to get donations to their campaign so that they can buy more votes.
That makes sense. Sorry, excuse me. That does make sense. Well, I'm like, all right, look. So already I'm on board, though. It did work. Like, I'm already on board with this no taxing tips.
Well, that's certainly not ideal. I thought it was cool because this is probably like the only time in my adult life that I can think of where two presidential candidates were on the same page about literally anything. And honestly, it just made sense because you've got Republicans, people on the right side of the aisle that generally speaking are just against taxes, period, of any kind. And then you've got Democrats or people on the left side of the aisle that, you know, they're more pro-taxes, but generally speaking, they want to tax richer people, not necessarily tax lower income people, like generally speaking, the people that are working for tips. And then for me, I was just excited I was going to be allowed to tip somebody that did a good job, knowing that the government wasn't going to step in like fucking Debo and take some of the money.
All right, let's go. I love that too.
Nothing.
Hell yeah. Got about $200, huh, Debo?
I got about $200.
Because that's absolutely ridiculous. In my mind, at least, a tip is basically a gift to that person, and you're allowed to give away like $17,500 a year to an individual as a gift and not have it taxed. So why the fuck does the government need to tax the $5 gift that I'm giving to the kid that delivered my pizza? So
you know what? He's correct. I hadn't really considered it like that before, but it is, right? Because it's a, you know, it's kind of like a gift for doing good work, for answering the questions, for being polite, for being there, for giving you a good experience. There's a lot of entertainment that kind of goes into being a server or a bartender. Like, you have to, a lot of the time, be, you know, you have to read the table. You have to be very good at reading the table and finding out if they want that. But like, there's a lot of interactions there that involve improv, that involve like just being really, really present with the people and, you know, making the jokes and laughing at theirs. And like, I don't know, there is a performance aspect to it. So it's like you get, you know, good job, good performance, you know, and having the government. That's why we do prefer cash tips most of the time, because cash tips we can kind of avoid declaring sometimes. But like if it's a credit card tip, it just automatically is counted. And then we get taxed on it. And because of because the hourly is so low, like it's just even more. It's just getting yoinked out of that because none of us are making like a livable wage hourly either.
So I was excited. I thought for like the first time in my adult life, the Republicans and the Democrats agreed on something and it was actually going to help out normal working everyday Americans. And then I wake up and the news cycle hits and every mainstream media outlet and every economist on the planet apparently thinks that this is an awful idea. And they've got the dumbest fucking reasons I've ever heard of in my entire life.
Stand up for me, Nick.
Those right after a word from our sponsor.
Okay.
This video is brought to you by Rocket Money. It is pretty much your one-stop shop for all your financial needs. It helps you establish a budget, it monitors your credit, and it even lets you track your net worth. But what I use it most for is helping me track and cancel all my subscriptions, because I'm always trying to watch MMA fights. My wife's trying to watch Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever, and then we have to sign up for a different streaming service every other day because for some reason every MMA fight and every Caitlin Clark game is on a different streaming service. For
Capitalism is the reason. It's because companies have realized if they have a bunch of different streaming services and you can only have certain things on one and certain things on the other, it's better for their bottom line because you'll buy both. This is why we got rid of cable, and yet here we are.
For some reason, so you gotta sign up for the 7-day free trial, then you forget that you signed up for it, and then you're paying $10 a month for the next 10 years. In addition to that, all your other recurring bills like your cell phone bill, your internet provider, your cable, Rocket Money will actually help you negotiate lower prices for those bills as well. So if you want to give Rocket Money a try, you can check it out at rocketmoney.com/fatfiles. I'm gonna have that link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, the history of tipping. Tips have functionally...
You're standing up for me. I'm here for this. I'm so on board. Stand up for me, Nick.
Only actually been taxed since like 2012. Buh! Actually, tips have always been considered taxable income. Buh! Yeah, I'm aware. That's why I use the word functionally in there, because yeah, they were technically taxable income since 1913 when the income tax was first established. However, they were never actually really taxed until about 2012. And that's because you couldn't enforce it, right? Because at the end of the day, laws only matter if you can actually enforce them. And back in the 1900s, all the transactions were done in cash, and you had to rely on that waiter or waitress or whoever to report the amount of tips they got to the IRS, which nobody on the face of the earth is actually gonna do. Buh! But it's still illegal, so you have to. Buh! Holy shit, I do not understand how people don't understand this concept. Okay, let me break it down for you a little bit more, all right? I live in Iowa, for example, and if I'm sitting down at dinner and somebody says, hey, will you pass the butter, and I grab some margarine instead and pass that to them, that's illegal in the state of Iowa. It is a misdemeanor to pass off margarine as butter.
Oh,
okay?
sick.
Guess who?
Wait, is that true? I mean, there's lots of weird laws. That might be an accurate thing.
Who's enforcing that law? Fucking
nobody.
Nobody. It's illegal in Arizona to put llamas in bathtubs. It's illegal in Delaware to whisper in church. Okay.
I love that he is actually going through like the ridiculous illegal laws, but then or illegal things that are illegal, the most ridiculous illegal things. It is funny that the butter thing is Iowa. But yeah, no, there's a lot of really weird laws out there. I think in Arizona it's illegal to shoot a whale from a pickup truck or something. And it's like, well, where are you going to even, how is that gonna, what? You know, there's certain things that are just like on the books that I'm sure has a good reason, but a lot of those reasons have been lost to time. But, you know, and like, yeah, we always did that. Like, and also I worked at a bunch of places too, where it's like they cashed us out at the end of the night and gave us all of the tips in cash. And then we're like, don't just like put like 1 cent or something in the taxable thing. And it's just like, because again, it's not like we're not making a livable wage on our paychecks. Like we just aren't. And a lot of the places, almost every single place I've ever worked would not be able to afford to pay all of their staff a livable wage, like and stay in business. So the owners of the businesses also are relying on people tipping their servers to get to that livable wage so that they can stay in business. Restaurants are so expensive, and landlords are charging so much money these days for restaurant spaces. That should be criminal how much the landlords are charging for some of these restaurant spaces these days. And it's like, but then again, people leave and they can get these certain tax breaks on the empty building. It's a whole thing. Anyway, it evolved into unhinged ranting even earlier than we thought it would.
Okay, none of that shit is getting enforced. Nobody cares. This is one of those times.
Ow! Christ, Jake, take it easy, man.
That would. Oh, Jesus Christ. Ow! Jesus Christ.
Yeah, get him.
Now, that being said, the government absolutely does not want it to be one of those times. The government wants to tax tips really bad, and they've got a long track record to prove it. In 1965, the IRS really tried to crack down on this when they came out and basically said like, hey, you're required to report all of your incomes. It's taxable income, and you need to pay us taxes on it. But 1965, everybody was still paying with mostly cash, so everybody continued to just not listen. So the IRS could do literally nothing about it. So, still wanting to get that tax money, in 1982, the IRS came out and then told the employers, hey, we're going to require you to track your employees' tips, and then you report that back to us, okay? Multiple problems with this again. You're asking the employer to side with the government over their own employees, so that's...
And their own business. Like, again, like I said, a lot of employers, especially smaller, like mom and pop type shops, can't really, like, it's hard for them to afford that kind of thing sometimes. And they don't want to lose out on good servers. And it's like, so it's like, again, the tips are often kind of helpful with the owner's business, like keeping them in business, which they would like to do.
That's probably not going to happen most of the time. And then, even if that does happen, it's still 1982. Everybody's still paying with cash. And if the employer's trying to figure out how much money in tips the employees made, they're just going to lie anyways. So it's still completely ineffective. So the IRS is just getting more and more pissed off. They realize that they really have no way to track this, which means they have no way to enforce it, which means there's people out there just giving money to other people and the government's not getting a cut, which absolutely infuriates them. So in 2000, they basically resort to scare tactics. They launched the Tip Alternative Reporting Agreement, which is essentially an education program for employers and employees, letting them know how dangerous it is if they don't report their tips. Again, completely ineffective. So then they launch another program in 2002 known as the Employer Tip Reporting Compliance Agreement, which was basically the same thing all over again. And again, it is completely ineffective. And then in 2007, they get a truly diabolical idea when they come out with the Small Business Work Opportunity Act, which basically goes to the employers and says, hey, you need to start tracking all of your employees' tips, and the more tips you report of your employees, we're going to turn around and give you a tax credit so that you actually make money the more your employees report tips.
That'll frickin' do it, especially for some of the issues that I was talking about earlier. I feel like that might push certain small businesses over the edge, because again, they would lose out on money if they're not. So man, the government's like, we have to take the money from the poors. Just keep all the money from the poors. Let's just suck it all up.
Basically, they're taking the employer-employee relationship and pitting them against one another over who gets to make the money. Okay, 100% government playbook 101. Take two groups of poor people, get them to fight each other instead. They'll never realize that you're the one being the asshole. Okay, makes perfect sense. They do it all the time.
I say, let them fight each other. Or we lay back, watch, have a drink, play some wagers. Hey!
So this is where reporting on tips did start to go up quite a bit because some employers were in fact willing to sell out their employees. However, a lot of them still weren't willing to do that. So then in 2012, the IRS finally came out with the Attributed Tip Income Program, which is basically the IRS saying, hey, it's 2012. Most people are paying with a debit or credit card, some electronic form of payment, which means that you now have a digital record of them receiving that money. And we're going to legally require you as the employer to report that information to us.
Yep. They still do ask, it's like, report your cash tips, and literally just zero. The only time that I've ever worked with someone who was reporting their cash tips is because they were trying to get a loan for a house. So they needed to prove that they had enough, collateral or whatever. So they had to start reporting that cash money so that they could be like, this is all of my income. But like, I have never worked with anybody who, actually reports that honestly. And it's just, and like, honestly, I've never worked for a company that forced you to do that either. I mean, IHOP maybe, I don't know. I wasn't paying too much attention to IHOP, but my paychecks from IHOP were fat $0 every single week. So thanks, taxes.
Gotcha.
And this is where tips really functionally started to be taxed, because even in modern times, if you tip with cash, they can just put that in their pocket and nobody really knows. But the vast majority of people tip on the receipt with their debit or credit card, and now there's an electronic paper trail, and they have to end up reporting that to the IRS, and then they do have to pay taxes on it.
Thanks, Obama.
So look, I'm not a tax expert. I'm not an economist. I'm an electrician that just likes to point out obvious shit. So I figured we've only functionally been taxing tips since like 2007 to 2012, however you want to look at it. I remember when I was a waiter in 2008 in high school, and my boss had to pull me aside and be like, hey, just so you know, our company's going to start reporting all the electronic tips to the IRS. So you're going to have to pay taxes on that on the end of the year. Just be aware, because I worked for a major chain restaurant and they were willing to sell us down the river. So I just figured, like, we've only been taxing this thing for 10 years. In reality, what's it gonna hurt to just not tax these guys, right? Because
see, I'm not surprised, honestly, that he worked at food service. Like, you can kind of tell, like, the passion for, like, the service members is still very much there. And it's like, yeah, it's like, I love this. Don't tax us on tips. Don't tax us on tips. And then it's like, because I one of the things I was wondering if this video is going to be about is like, is it actually tax on tips or tips on tax? So it's like I always tip on the full amount whenever I'm out anywhere and I'm tipping. I'm tipping on the full amount, including the tax. Honestly, it's like a $4 difference sometimes. You know, it's like a $12 meal, but like it's $8 on the pre-tax and $12 with the tax. I'll give them the, you know, the $3 or $4 as opposed to the $2. But that's just because, again, I've worked in the industry for long enough where it's like the extra dollar or two could really help somebody out. And my issue with taxing without tipping on the full thing is when people ask me about it. And they're like, do you tip on the full amount or just the before tax? And I was like, because whenever they come at me with that, I'm just like, just don't tell me. Don't tell me how you're going to tip me, because if you're asking that, it really feels like you are telling me that like I'm not worth it, or like it feels like an attack a little bit. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that for you. Absolutely not. And it's like, just tip on the number you want to tip on. Just you don't have to tell me about it. You don't have to tell me that you don't think I'm worth the extra $2. Like, you don't have to say that and be really smug about it, because it's always a certain attitude about it too. Like, whoever asks about it usually is asking really snidely. There's been many, many, many people who I had a great experience with, great customers, and I know for a fact they tipped me on the pre-tax amount. And guess what? It was fine. It's fine. Like, just don't ask. Just don't, like, do what you're gonna do. Either tax, like, before or after. Make sure it's fair, you know? Just don't be a dick. Don't be a dick. That's all. That's my unhinged rant.
If I end up ordering a pizza during a snowstorm and some 19-year-old kid in a clapped-out Camry comes through, I want to be able to give him a $20 bill in cash as a thank you and not have the government be involved, right? I just want the authority and the agency in my life to be able to do nice things for random strangers and not have the government demand a cut. That's all I want. But apparently I'm wrong, because every single mainstream media outlet started putting out news articles and videos explaining in detail why this is a horrible fucking idea, and all of the economists agree. And then you actually read the articles or you watch the interviews with economists, and they have the dumbest fucking talking points on the planet, to the point that it's actually insulting to your intelligence.
Also, like, the more money that poor people have, the more money they will spend on stuff. Like, just in general. And you'll get taxes on that. Like, why is it a bad thing to put more money in the pockets of your people? Like, oh, argument one, it's going to cost the government? How? Okay, he'll tell me how they say it's going to cost the government. It's literally not, because it feels like this is going to be one of those arguments. It's like, he lost this amount of money. It's like, he never had that amount of money. He did not make that amount of money, so he did not lose it. It was not taken from him. He did not ever have it. That's not loss. That's not having.
So the first argument is, if we don't tax tips, it's going to end up costing the government between $100 and $150 billion over the course of the next 10 years. So where are they going to recoup that money from, right? Because you have to go and get that money from somewhere else if we're not going to take it from the waiters and waitresses and delivery drivers.
Where do you get the revenue to offset that? Because it's also apparently going to advance the insolvency date of Social Security's retirement trust fund by over a year. Now,
at a glance, that almost sounds like a mildly coherent opinion if you don't think about it whatsoever. Like, it's so egregious that one of two things is happening. Either they're just blatantly lying and they know that you're dumb, or two, there's this like phenomenon that happens where you become so well educated that you've been detached from the rest of normal society outside of academia for so long that you no longer have any common sense. And I think that might actually be what's going on.
I think that's
now look, again, I can't stress this enough. Not a tax professional, not an economist, just a guy, but hear me out. What if we just spent less fucking money? You know, like, what if we bought and gave away a few less fucking missiles to other countries? Like, I feel like that's a good compromise.
No.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Nick is coming fucking through. Oh my God. He's coming through for us today.
Oh, okay, we'll just move right on to the next argument then.
There aren't a lot of tipped workers in America.
According to economist Ernie Tedeschi, tipped work accounts for just 2.5% of all employment.
Cool, I understand that most people aren't paid in tips, okay? I'm not rooting for this plan because I think it's gonna change the world on a grand scale. I'm rooting.
But it will change the world for, like, the people who are affected by, which, like, god damn. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, so there's the service industry people, and then there's like nail techs and like beauticians and stuff. They're tipped employees. Movers. I feel like there's more tips out there than people are really thinking. Also, it's like, I don't know.
Rooting for the plan because I should be allowed to give the fucking delivery driver $10 without the government stepping in like the mafia and demanding their fucking cut.
It's been 24 hours. Got my money?
Yeah, I don't have it, sorry.
Well, all right then. That's good, OJ.
And then the next thing they go on to say with this argument as well, it could be really hard on businesses like restaurants because now the restaurant owner has to deal with the fact that some of his employees just got a tax cut and the people in the kitchen didn't get a tax cut, meaning the waiters effectively just got a raise and the cooking staff didn't, and then people might get mad and quit and it could end up ending their entire business.
Tell me you've never worked in food service without telling me you've never worked in food service. Holy shit. Oh my god, really? Oh, the kitchen will quit if the servers aren't taxed on their... We'd still be taxed on the core thing, and the kitchen workers are making more money than we are on the actual paycheck. Like, what? It just...
And this is the part where they're actually insulting your intelligence, right? I mean, you expect me to honestly believe that an entrepreneur that's smart enough to run a fucking business is gonna have the government approach them and be like, hey, I'm gonna take less money from your business. And the entrepreneur is just like, fuck, this is gonna put me under.
Right?
Having more money is just fucking, I can't do it. It's
Also
not
that.
manageable.
I haven't cried like that since Titanic.
Also
Okay,
that.
controversial opinion, I'm so hardcore capitalist that I wholeheartedly believe that if your business goes under because the government steps in and says, hey, I'm gonna quit fucking over some of your employees. Literally, I'm gonna add more money to what your employees are receiving
you
on a daily
deserve it,
basis.
right?
And that's what fucking puts you out of business. I don't care because you suck at being an entrepreneur
that
and you
makes
deserve
sense.
to go out of business at that point. I encourage the competition because I know there's other people out there that if the government stepped in and said, hey, I'm gonna take less money, they'd fucking figure it out. And the best part about this, that's not even the most offensive argument, okay? This is the most offensive argument.
So for example, if you took a delivery worker who delivered food, they probably get tips. And so they would qualify for this tax benefit. If you took a delivery worker who delivered packages, they usually don't. So they wouldn't get a tax benefit. I can't think of a good reason why you would want to give a tax break to the person who delivers food, but not to the person who delivers mail.
Okay, to compare a pizza delivery driver to a fucking UPS driver is absolutely fucking insane, okay? It doesn't make any sense. It's on par with being like, well, you know, we don't want to give CNAs a tax cut because then we're not going to give doctors a tax cut, and they're basically the same job. They both...
I really just don't think that these people understand that delivery drivers, that service workers, that bartenders, like, we're most of it making less than $8 an hour. Like, we're not salaried, we don't have benefits, we don't get paid time off. Like, like trying to get health care through your restaurant is like pulling teeth. Like, because like at least the way it used to be was that you had to work full time in order to be able to qualify for the health benefits at a restaurant. And most restaurants were not giving full-time opportunities to anybody. Like, they're offering 30 hours a week and take it or leave it. So that means you're not getting healthcare. A lot of restaurants, you don't get overtime. Like, you don't get time and a half. Like, it's not the same job. It's like we were screwed from the outset in the model of how it works, right? Like, when I was working at IHOP in the 2010s, I was making $2.26 an hour. $2.26. Which is why, like, after taxes, and then the company did this thing where they forced, like, you to pay for your employee meal out of your paycheck, whether or not you ate the employee meal. And I didn't most of the time because it was IHOP. But like, all of my money came from tips, every cent of it. And that was not the case for the people in the kitchen who were making minimum wage, and some of them above minimum wage. Minimum wage does need to go up, but that's a different story. But like, it's not like, and now in certain cities it's higher. So now I'm making something like $8.50 an hour or something for that, and a lot of that goes away from tips from taxes too. So it's like all of my money I mean, there's a little bit of my money that comes from doing this, but like most of my money is coming from tips. Like that's how I pay my bills. That's how I pay my rent. It's how I buy food. Like, oh my God, it's not the same. Like, it's not the same thing. It's not the same job. It's different. It's different. And they made it different when they started it.
Just walk around the fucking hospital wearing pajamas, right? No, one of them is paid significantly more than the other for performing more complex fucking...
I need to go back and see what he was talking about the doctors, because I went off on another
tangent. Around the fucking hospital wearing... Okay, to compare a pizza delivery driver to a fucking UPS driver is absolutely fucking insane, okay? It doesn't make any sense. It's on par with being like, well, you know, we don't want to give CNAs a tax cut because then we're not going to give doctors a tax cut, and they're basically the same job. They both just walk around the fucking hospital wearing pajamas, right? No, one of them is paid significantly more than the other for performing more complex fucking tasks, okay? A UPS driver on average makes $27 an hour with wages going as high as $43 an hour, on top of 18 paid holidays and sick days, 7 weeks of vacation, and industry-leading fucking healthcare.
It's very different.
Is making $7 to $13 an hour with no fucking benefits whatsoever.
And a lot of the time they have to pay, and like they're paying for the gas out of their own dime too. Like it's not like sometimes like there's a $3 delivery charge that's pays for the gas, but like,
if no tax on tips goes into effect, there's zero fucking UPS drivers that are going to quit their job and go work for Pizza Hut. Also, I lied. That was actually the second most offensive argument. The most offensive argument is this.
Let's say I'm a salesperson that gets a commission, or let's say that I'm somebody on Wall Street that gets a year-end bonus. So I reclassify my commission as a tip, or I reclassify my year-end bonus as a tip. The employer helps out because they'll get a benefit, bonus. And so everybody wins.
Okay, this is blatantly taking advantage of the fact that most Americans don't really understand how taxes and income works, and they don't really know how to read their W-2, okay? You can't just go to your fucking employer and be like, hey, Jim, I thought about this. I'd rather my salary get converted from normal income to tips. Hardy har har har. That's not how any of that fucking works. And if you don't believe me, go to your boss tomorrow and be like, hey boss, I've thought about this a lot, and I would really appreciate it if on my W-2, you changed all the wages I've earned and told the IRS that those were capital gains, because capital gains are taxed far less than normal wages. You want to know what your boss is going to tell you? No, because that's fucking tax fraud. You want to know why? Because the IRS has very clear definitions of what earned wages are and what capital gains are. They also have a very clear definition of what a tip is. From the IRS, tips are discretionary, optional, or extra payments determined by the customer that employees receive from customers. So a salesperson receiving a commission, not a fucking tip. So a CEO getting a bonus at the end of the year, not a fucking tip. Like
not at all.
Time the government is actually trying to give a tax cut to lower income working people, they come out swinging with the lies of, well, this tax cut's actually only gonna affect the rich because the rich will just fucking magically turn all their income into tips, is fucking nonsense.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm calm.
Thank you.
Calm. Now, to be completely fair and intellectually honest, there was one good argument that these economists managed to come up with, and that was that if you don't tax tips, you kind of end up incentivizing it in a way, and you're going to help prop up tipping culture even more than it already is. And a lot of people don't like tipping culture in America and wish it would just go away. Which, you know what, to be fair, actually a great argument, right? Because we all feel that way, especially recently, because now they fucking whip the iPad around when you're like picking up your own pizza. It's not being delivered. They still want a 20% tip. Get the fuck out of here, right? Don't get me wrong. I don't mind tipping. anything. I'll tip the waiter, the waitress, the delivery driver.
Yeah.
I'll tip my tattoo artist. I'll tip my hairstylist. I mean, my wife does my hair, so her tip's a little bit different. But the point remains, okay? I don't mind giving out tips when you're actually doing something. But at the same time, it is a weird cultural norm that seemingly only America has in modern times, and it is kind of dumb. And if we got rid of it, it wouldn't hurt my feelings one bit. However,
see, that is kind of fair. I do understand where he's coming from with that. I mean, I usually, if I'm picking something up, which I almost never do because I'm super lazy, but if I'm picking something up, I'll leave $1 or $2. Like somebody still had to, just because I've worked in so many places where the people who are, doing the expo and packing everything and making sure everything's right, they're also a tipped worker. Like, so part of my brain is like, I don't know if this person's a tipped worker or not. And like, I've worked at places where it's like I was working counter, which means that I was sitting there answering phones. I was occasionally like pouring a few drinks, but like mostly phones and taking takeout orders and stuff. But I was not making minimum wage. I was still reliant on tips in that job, which was probably just bullshit from that job. That probably just is a sucky way that particular employer decided to run their business, was they were having the takeout people not make minimum wage. Until I became a manager, at which point it was different. But like people just, but when people didn't tip. So like then you have to split $20 between 5 different people who were back there all doing similar jobs. And it's like, oh, so my point is, even if it's like not much has happened, I'll leave $1, maybe $2. If I'm going to a coffee shop and they make a drink at the coffee shop, not if they necessarily just pour the drip coffee, I'm less likely to tip on that. But like if they make a cappuccino or they make like an actual drink they have to do, so I will leave a couple dollars for that. But I do understand where he is coming from and where everyone's like, you shouldn't have to tip on a pickup. I do understand where that is coming from, and I sympathize with that. I get it. I'm not going to be mad because you don't tip on a pickup. I'm just telling you, I usually do, just because having worked those kinds of jobs before, sometimes those people are still dependent on those tips.
The notion that the government should step in and tax it to decentivize tips is also complete fucking nonsense. Because guess what? If you actually do want to get rid of tips, one way to guarantee that you never ever achieve your goal is to allow the government to keep taxing them, making $150 billion, because then they're never going to get rid of it because they're making all the money off of it.
That's fair.
That's not fair.
You're learning.
Well, she says that's not fair. I was like, that's like, I was thinking fair point. All right, let's go, Ron Swanson.
Oh. Capital gains tax.
Okay, this is gonna be a tough pill to swallow. You might not like this opinion, but guess what? If you don't like tipping, don't tip. It's 100% voluntary. You don't have to do it, okay? And guess what? If you get enough people that quit tipping, it'll just go the fuck away and the problem is solved, okay? That's the answer.
Except for all of the people who are reliant on those tips. You get a bunch of people in your neighborhood to stop tipping, you are potentially condemning somebody who does have a job to homelessness or starvation or something. It's like, maybe until it's actually gone, maybe don't stop tipping. Like, or just don't go out. Or, do pickups. Don't go out to eat if you're not going to tip the server. Like, and if you're mad about how the service was, tip them less, You can let them know how terrible the service was with a really shitty tip. But like, don't just stop tipping people.
Answer is not, I don't like tipping, therefore I'm gonna root for taxes, okay? That's completely fucking absurd. Oh, but maybe if the government taxes me more, I'll finally get free healthcare, or public schools will be better. No, the government's never gonna fucking make public schools better or give you free healthcare, okay? They're gonna take your money, they're gonna buy missiles, and they're gonna shoot them at poor people in countries that you don't know how to spell. Okay, don't get this twisted. I don't like that. I'm not rooting for it. I think it sucks. However, my point is, if you're advocating that the government should tax tips so that they can divert like a third of that money over to healthcare or education or whatever you think is important,
they're not going to do that.
What if you just did that? What if you took all of the money that you were going to tip that person and you donated it to the local school instead?
Okay.
You can solve the problem way better than the government ever can. Quit letting the government and the news gaslight you into rooting for fucking taxes. And apparently in this instance, it's not even the government. Literally, the Republican candidate and the Democratic candidate are on the same page, and it's just the news trying to gaslight you into taxes, which makes no sense to me. Anyways, I gotta go before I give myself a heart attack. Sorry, this was so unhinged, but thanks for watching. Quack bang, out.
Thank you, Nick.
Seriously, am I the only person that feels this way? Because reading the news headlines in the comment sections kind of makes me feel like I am.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Makes me more glad that I wore his shirt today. Okay, I'll preach. So I had lots of little interjections and stuff like that, but again, this affects me so personally that I feel like I'm allowed to have opinions about it. I really liked that video. I thought he made excellent points. I'm 100% on board with what he said in this one. Like every step of the way, except for the part where he was like, well, if you don't want to tip, just don't, and tell other people not to do it too. And like, then it's voluntary. It is voluntary, but it's also like kind, again, especially because we're not making, like we are, that is how we pay for our entire lives. And it's not like, you can't say, oh, you're lazy, not working, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I do. I mean, I've had multiple times over the course of my life where I've been working like 70-hour weeks. I had a couple of different places at the same time just to make sure that I have, the money. It's like, I'm not working. There's only so much that I can do. And I have a degree in like media arts and design and journalism. And I'm doing this with it. So, thank you for watching. I liked this one. This one was one of my very favorites by Nick, I think. I'm gonna give him a little like. I might tip him on this video. I might send him a little super thanks for this video because I just felt very seen and I appreciated it. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this unhinged bartender reacts. Bye-bye.